Hi, this is Roger at the end of a very long day, but I've got an awful lot done. I don't get days like that very often where I'm just, I suppose you could just say, in the mood to do stuff. I've actually got a lot done today. I've done watering, I've trimmed and filmed several of my bonsai for future postings. Obviously this is an orchid channel primarily, but that is my second hobby, bonsai trees, so there's some spring pruning to come with those, little spring tidy ups. We'll look at them later in the year, but I haven't finished yet. But obviously I don't want to post those one after the other, and at least one of them is quite long. So there's that to come, and I said I'd do this today. Oh. And with the last little bit of energy, we'll get these two mounted. And this is my new Victoria Regina. We won't be keeping the label because it's spelt wrong. And I haven't got a clue what we're going to get in here. It could be nothing. Yeah. This was going to determine whether I would use that cellar again. And the answer is probably no, because that is what I call a con. That's basically dead roots, yeah, and it's been stuck in that pot with a load of grit to help it stand up, yeah, and buried deep enough that you can't see the base of the plant to see that there is also no new growths. But nonetheless, I've grown on worse dendrobiums than that. There is no point in trimming these roots because some of them may just branch out, and also I need something to put on the mount, but that is effectively a dead root system. Not good. But as I said, if it had a bad or dead root system, I can work with it because I've got canes that are growing that are highly likely, when they get in a decent medium like moss on a mount, they will start shooting roots. But that one won't because it's rotten. Where's my scissors? Oh, they're in sterilizing. I'll do it in a minute then, because they're soaking in alcohol, and that's not really what kills the stuff on the scissors. It's the evaporative, the fast evaporation. So I'll trim that in a minute. But yeah, I mean it's in good media because it's probably only just been done. Yeah, and the weight has been added, lots of stones to make it heavier so that the pot stands up. But as I say, most of these roots are dead. They might just branch. That's a dead cane, completely dead cane. But it's the only one, so it's okay with that. And maybe it's oldest one. Looks like it's been bent, so it could have actually been damaged a while ago. And now it's just come back. So what I'm going to do with that is put it in the sink, run it under the tap initially. That'll get it wet, yeah, and that'll help me mount it, yeah, and it'll start a rehydration process. I suspect that that's been sat in that pot for some time because this is bone dry. There's not a breath of moisture in there, and I don't know how long it's been like that. That could be why the roots are incredibly dried and desiccated. They may not be dead. They might just be totally dried out. We shall see. That's that one. And then this one is the one that smells of tangerines. That is in fact a black hair type, and it's coming off the mount because I don't like it. I don't trust it on the grounds I've never used anything like that before, and I know that if I mount it my way, it'll grow. If I leave it on there, it only may grow. It could have done better on there before for all I know, but it's not going to get given the chance. It's coming off. The reason why I'm happy to do it is I had one root that wasn't actually attached. It had grown in the hole where the hook was, so it wasn't actually attached. None of these roots were attached, and I'm not even sure that this has been on there that long. The moss isn't old, so it may have been recently done. But either way, it's got new roots growing. The old roots that are on there in the moss are happy roots, they're not dead roots. The moss isn't old and mushroomy, so if I don't get it all off it doesn't actually matter. But it would be nice to put some fresh moss on that is alive as well, my latest thing. Let's pull that out and try not to take that new root off. There we go. Right, so that's not a bad root system compared with the last one. Most of these are active roots. There's a few old ones on there, not many. Most of them are good roots. This has been grown on from a seedling, tiny little canes at the start of the plant, gradually getting bigger and bigger. Now how far off blooming size that actually is, I don't really know. I think it was sold as near blooming size, but it has been grown on from a seedling. That pseudobulb's obviously not going to stay. Quite honestly, now my scissors are sterilised and dry. That one can come off on the grounds that the leaves are dropping anyway, and it's so tiny it won't hold anything for the plant. It's not exactly a good backup resource when it's so tiny. That's all that's going to get. I don't see this as a branching root system yet. That doesn't mean to say it won't branch. Most of the roots are singular. They're not forked. Oh no, that's two stuck together. So at the moment these all look like single form roots, but we do have enough actively growing roots, 1, 2, 3, there was another one round there, 4, that are brand new roots with green tips that are going to push on once they get into something decent. So that's that. I don't think we'll be keeping that, and we won't be keeping the label because the plant name's spelt wrong again. It's cariniferum, not cariniferum. I think people would just, all you've got to do is start typing the name in on a Google page and Google will fill it in for you spelt correctly. It's not rocket science. Right, I'll just clear this lot up and then we'll get, now that I can see what I've got, I can choose mount sizes and things. That's why I didn't bring them in yet, because I like to see what I'm trying to mount to go and choose a size and everything. So I'll be back when I've sorted all that out. Right, I'm back. Short on many things at the moment. We're short on energy, we're short on daylight, that's for sure. And we're also short on food. I don't mean I haven't got any. Always got food. It's getting very near to the time where it ought to be going in here. That's possibly why the energy levels are lower than perhaps they ought to be. But yeah, I'm getting fooled now. The old days are getting quite a bit longer, and so my mind is still saying, because it's got used to it over many months, that it's not tea time yet, and my stomach's telling me yes it is. So we look at the clock and yes it is. Anyway, I've started, so I'll finish. What I've done with these two mounts is this one had quite a big ridge down here, so it sort of, you know, it had like a peak in it, so I've cut it off, just used some very sharp cutters to take the ridge back, so it's a little bit flatter now and a bit more uniform. And I had to do the same with this one, yeah, just to make it a little flatter. And also things like this where you get a severe curve on the mount, yeah, it's difficult to tie it. It'd be much easier if the back was flat, but you know, it comes off of branches and trunks, so they're curved. But taking the sticky out bits off does help. Same here, took that ridge off, so it's quite flat on the back now. So that's the preparation of the mount. Sterilising for me is pouring boiling water over them, back and front. Yeah. So they're sterile now, as far as I'm concerned they are anyway. And I cut the rotten cane off and put some cinnamon on it to dry that off. And I had a look at my other Victoria regina, and there's a couple of roots on there in the moss that have branched, and that just tells me not to cut all these roots off. That, you know, a lot of these are dead, you know, they're just going, you know, they're gone. But in amongst them there may be some that can branch, so cutting them off would be a silly idea, because you remove the chance of them branching. If they're gone, they can't branch, can they? So, you know, there are those that are deciding to stay there, so I'm hoping that those that I leave on there are going to branch. And if not, the canes that are growing on, like this one, will produce some new roots. Although looking at the shape of the plant, let's see if I can get it where you can see it too. If you look at this cane down to the base, it's got roots coming out of it. So it's already produced its new roots. It might not produce any more. We shall have to wait and see. In which case I'm dependent on the ones I've got branching. So this one's going upside down. It will end up pendulous whether I do it that or not. And trying to mount a plant with a cane that tall, it's going to just do that, isn't it? And possibly break. So we will hang it upside down, which is where it would have ended up if, you know, if it had grown naturally anyway. The larger canes do arch over, sorry. Branching roots on my brain now. It's got quite a lot of roots, so I'm going to have to go round quite a few times to get enough moss on all of these roots. None sticking out, no bare ones. I want them all covered up. And we'll have some scissors as well. That'll help. And as I say, I want a good bit of moss on this Victoria regina to try and get these roots to regenerate. Given what I paid for the plant, for the size of the plant in today's market, I wouldn't say it was an excessive price, but it's higher than what I would normally pay for an orchid. But then the postage was quite cheap because it was a UK seller. So you have to take your swings and your roundabouts. But I'd like to have seen a better root system, quite honestly. As I said, I think this might be an import. And it's just been chucked in a pot and forgotten, not watered or anything. So we were starting from that position and we'll work from there. Now on a plant like this I would like to put some moss underneath, but if I do that I'm cutting my own throat, so we won't. But the plant needs to go relatively low down the mount. Yeah? So the roots are about halfway up the mount, which means if they do start to grow, they've got more room. Yeah? If I put the plant up there, the roots have got nowhere to go, and if I put it down there, it just looks silly. So that's aesthetic. It would grow like that, it would be happy, but it looks better if part of the canes cover the mount. So it's going to go about there. So we'll grab hold of it and we'll go around once, make sure we've got hold of something. And then we'll have to go get some moss on. Now I'm okay at doing this, others may not be, people who are trying this for the first time. I can actually hold that first turn with that hand and work with the other one. Not everybody can do that, some people need both hands. In which case, go round the roots and tie it off, round the back. Yeah? Now I'm putting some zombie moss on. Determined to keep calling it that. As long as it keeps coming back to life, I'm going to call it zombie moss because it's supposed to be dead. And the reason for doing that is it holds moisture longer than my real moss, my live moss. So it gives my live moss some extra moisture to stop it dying. If moss dries out completely, it's not happy. Whereas this stuff is already dead, allegedly. Well, that does seem to have a mind of its own every now and again. Not always, but you know, it does. It does have a go at coming back to life sometimes. Right, so that's that. Now I need to get some real moss to go over the top. And I like this idea now. I can get this moss anytime I like. It's readily available. It does mean going out, of course, but it means going out to somewhere where there is no one. No human for miles. Suits me down to the ground. And also in the current set of circumstances is not objectionable. Going out to collect this where I do, which is a marshy forest in effect. There's nobody else there. Most people look at it and think, ooh, that's all wet and soggy, I'm not going out there. But there are places to walk where you don't sink up to your waist. You just need to know what you're doing. And I think we'll put a little bit of the fluffy moss on, see if it'll grow. Tuck it in amongst the other. I haven't seen any, I've used a bit on several mounts and I haven't seen any growing yet, but we will keep going. I will get some to grow eventually. I'm just drying my hands before I start winding. Now, as I said, I can hold my tie is looped round a finger, round another finger, it's held firmly, and that stops everything falling off until I can get it to unwind from my finger, because it's managed to grab hold of it now, won't let go. Gotcha. And then I can start winding round the moss now, because the plant's already held. So what we're doing now is pulling the moss tight onto the roots, which will hopefully keep them nicely hydrated, and hopefully some of them will branch. If they don't, we're dependent on the extra humidity around the base of the plant now, because it's mounted, to actually generate some new roots. And who knows, we might even get a new growth. Who knows? Although quite honestly, this plant looks like it's out of season to me. It looks like it's come from another part of the world, should we say, because these new growths on it that are actively growing should have stopped in the winter, really, if they were last year's. So it sounds to me like it's been kept growing through the winter, which it would not normally do. So as I said, I think it's an import. No guarantee, but right, there we go. That's everything held in place. And we can come back round here and find the original end and tie off. And everything's nicely held in place with any luck. And nothing's all loose and floppy, and my hands are wet, so I'm going to have a hell of a job doing this knot, because the fishing line will stick to my hands and not go where I want it. Gotcha. Ugh. That didn't actually tie. That's what happens when your hands are wet. It just doesn't work so well. Anyway, we've got it now. Guess what's coming next? Just so that I don't get told off. I know who you are. I bet you were waiting to see if I went ahead with no tag. I am getting back into the habit of making sure my plants are labelled at an appropriate time when I've got them in my hands and I'm thinking about it, like changing from a pot to a mount, or on the very rare occasion where I do it the other way round. But again, I mean, you know, this plant is unique. I wouldn't forget what it is. But we do have moments when our brain just decides to let us down and say, nope, I know you know what you're talking about. I know you know what the name of the plant is, but I'm not going to let you have that information. I'm going to keep it stored away and not let you get at it. And it just plays tricks. So there we go. I can't really get that far. Let me just see if I can wiggle the camera without you all being seasick. There we go. So that's from the top of the mount. You can see it is quite a substantial sized plant, which is why I got it in the first place. So let's get back down where the other one is. Right, so that's that one. Get that one out of the way. And quickly do the other one. The other one's going to be a lot easier, quite honestly, because it's smaller. And this one is a black hair type. They are not normally arching or pendulous. They grow upright. So this one goes upright on the mount, because that's how it's going to grow. What I've got to try and find out is where I think the next new growth is going to come from. And I've cut the smaller pseudo bulbs off. So that's the oldest bulb now. It's progressing from a seedling. So that's also the youngest bulb. And then we've got two in front of it, which it's difficult to determine which one came first. But I think this one did, followed by this one. So either way, the next new growth is going to come out somewhere here. So that needs to be the front of the plant. So that's the way it needs to go. It means that little one's a bit squashed up at the back, but if I twist it sideways like that, it can go flat. Yeah, so that's that one. Oh, let's get that one done. Keep doing that up far too tight. It's not necessary. It's not going anywhere, is it? All it is a slit and you just tuck it in, but I keep pulling it too hard and it goes in so far it won't come out with the little short end that I've got, so I have to use my teeth. Which is not what they were designed for, of course. They were designed for doing what I'm going to do next after I finish this. Eat my tea. I haven't even decided what I'm going to have yet. One thing I'd like to have tonight, which I can't have because I haven't got it out of the freezer, I've got some nice pieces of wild Alaskan salmon, which would be very nice tonight, but not frozen solid it won't be. So just remember in a minute to get some out ready for tomorrow night, and then we'll have it tomorrow instead, which means I've got to find something else for tonight. Choices: spaghetti, chili, curry. Those are nearly always in the fridge because they're my homemade cauldron full of food where I make multiple portions all in one go. There's some Thai inspired prawn fish cakes in there. That sounds quite nice, doesn't it? With some potatoes and perhaps some peas. Plant first, Roger. See how tired I'm getting. I think we're going to have, we might even break some of those. No, I think they'll bend. So I want to get most of these on. Well, that one's broken, so we'll have that one off. It saves worrying about it. Yeah, most of those are bend down, they'll be okay. That's about right, first go. So again, I shall wind that round to hold the plant in place and wrap it round my finger round the back of the mount. So I've got it now, and I've got hold of the mount, and I've got the tying thing, and the plant's held in place. Yeah? So all that's been done by winding it round my finger. And now we will get a little bit of zombie moss, because it helps, I hope, although this is still in the experimental stage. I think the zombie moss, because it stays moist a lot longer than the live moss does, it helps keep the live moss alive. That's my theory, but this is an experiment in its infancy. Look, will you go where you were put? Stop messing me about. If you see what I mean, because I've only really started using the live moss extensively this year, so it's new. So I don't know how it's going to go throughout the year. But I know that on mounted orchids, if you put live moss on there, you are cutting your own throat, because it means you can't leave your mounts any length of time relying on them staying alive, which the plant may well do because you've gone away for the weekend, but the moss won't. The moss will die right back if it dries right out. And then it will come back again. You know, I mean, we get droughts where if we had droughts and live moss couldn't come back, we wouldn't have any moss anymore, would we? So it obviously can come back to life after dying right back, but it wouldn't look too good for a while, so it's better not to let it happen in the first place. Keep your moss alive, and by doing so, in the growing season, you're keeping your plant hydrated, which is the purpose of the moss in the first place. But it is quite decorative. I mean, I'm doing this because I like the look, as well as the fact that I hope it's good for the plant. If it's not good for the plant, we're going to have some problems down the line, because I've done it to quite a few. So we will hope that it works. I'm sure it will. Go and ask Insa. He's the old live moss person. Always off doing stuff out in the wild, in places. I think he's been off on a moss hunt recently, which is good. You're stuck indoors, you have to find a way of getting out, or you'll go round the twist, quite honestly. With the current circumstances, we're all supposed to be just staying in now. In some places you don't get a choice. Men come and shout at you if you try and go out. But it makes sense, I'm all with it, but you can't stay indoors all the time, you will go loony. So you need to find a way and a reason and a place to be able to go out. Now if you've got a dog, you take your dog for a walk. If you don't want to get near anybody else, then do it at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then everybody else will think of that, and there'll be more dog walkers out at 4 o'clock in the morning than at 7 o'clock in the morning. But yep, and yet again, label. So this one is Dendrobium cariniferum, and I must admit, never heard of it, but I have now. And we will see, because it is remotely possible, and I do say remotely, that this could come into bloom this season. But I suspect it'll be next year that it does, on these growths that are currently growing when they become a year old. One way to find out. Keep it alive, keep it growing, keep it happy, and then it'll bloom. Right, complete with tag, and there we go. So that one's fanned out in such a way that hopefully wherever the new growth comes out, well, it's going to come out from the base of that one or the base of that one, so hopefully it's got room to go. And plenty of moss around the roots, keep those hydrated. So that's the other one done. And now let's get this cleared up ultra fast. I'm getting some real bulb patches on my live moss. I hope it does start to grow properly and start to spread. I don't know how fast growing moss is actually. We still got quite a bit left, and there was acres of it where I collected it from, so if I start getting a bit short, I'll just take another walk out. And again, that's a place where nobody goes, so I don't have to worry about bumping into people, do I? I know loads of places where I could walk all day and not see another living soul, which in a country as squashed up as this is not bad going, but you've got to know where to go. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.